The wind howled low across the canyon, whispering secrets to the mesquite and sagebrush. Buzzards circled lazily overhead, their shadows gliding across the earth like silent omens. Below them, a woman lay motionless, her white wedding dress torn and stained dark with blood. The lace was shredded, the once pristine bodice soaked through. Her face, half buried in dust, was as pale as moonlight. She blinked slowly, the sound of a crow's cry pulling her from the edge of unconsciousness. Pain flared sharp across her side. Breathing hurt. Moving hurt more. But Clara Whitmore moved anyway. One hand clawed into the earth, dragging her battered body inch by inch. Her lips were cracked. Her boots were gone. A blood trail marked her passage across the rocks. Somewhere behind her, vultures waited. Somewhere ahead, she didn't know. Only one thought anchored her to the world. I'm not dying here. It wasn't supposed to be this way. When Clara stepped off the stagecoach a week ago, she'd believed in new beginnings. A fresh start. She'd answered a letter from a man named Bo Carter, handsome on paper, full of promises. He owned land, needed a wife. She, a southern widow with nothing left but a small inheritance, needed a life. She thought fate had given her one more chance. Bo was tall and broad-shouldered when he met her, face tanned by the sun, a silver star pinned to his vest. Said he was respected in these parts. Said he'd built their home with his own hands. She remembered the way he took her gloved hand, kissed it like a gentleman. For the first 2 days, she even believed the dream was real. But on the third day, Bo stopped pretending. It started with silence, then harshness. By the fourth night, he'd struck her. Said she talked too much, asked too many questions. Said she should know her place. And on the fifth day, he offered her a ride out to see his cousin's land, where they could build a real home of their own. She should have known by the way he avoided her eyes. Should have noticed how he cinched the saddle tight without speaking, how he tied her satchel on his own saddle and not hers. They rode in silence for hours. When they reached the canyon, she turned to ask him how much farther. That was when he drew the pistol. I'm sorry, darlin', but you ain't part of the plan no more. The bullet hit her in the ribs. Not clean, not fatal. She didn't scream. There hadn't been time. Bo kicked her off the horse and let her roll down the rocky slope. She hit the bottom hard, lost in pain and grit. From above, she heard his voice. No one'll find you. By the time the buzzards get done, won't be much to bury. Then hoofbeats, retreating. Now in the fading light, Clara dragged herself beneath a scraggly tree. Her breath was ragged. Blood pooled beneath her. Her lips whispered names no one could hear. Her mother. Her first husband, lost to the war. God. The sky turned purple. Coyotes howled somewhere close. She closed her eyes. Cold crept in. It would be easier to let go. She thought of her hands, once soft, now cracked and raw. She thought of her name, Clara Whitmore Carter, though she'd never signed it willingly. Then a voice inside her said, "You're not done yet." In the dark, she dreamed of firelight. In the haze of half-sleep, she felt arms lift her. Not rough hands like Bo's. These were warm, steady. Her body was cradled, as if she weighed nothing. She smelled cedar smoke, felt heat on her face. A heartbeat that wasn't hers thudded near her ear. And then nothing. When she awoke, it wasn't a pain but warmth. Soft furs beneath her, herbs in the air. Shadows danced on the walls of a rounded dwelling, a lodge or a teepee. Firelight flickered. Her side ached, but it was clean, bandaged. She tried to sit up, gasped, and lay back. A figure moved into her view. Not Bo, not white. A woman aged, with long black braids and eyes like river stones, knelt beside her and pressed a hand gently to her shoulder. "You do not move yet," the woman said in accented English. "You are alive. He found you." "He who?" Clara rasped, her throat dry as bones. The woman tilted her head to the side. "My son." As if summoned, he entered without a sound, tall, broad-shouldered, his dark hair tied back, a feather braided in near his ear. His face was calm, but his eyes held storm. He stood for a long moment, saying nothing. Then softly, "You were bleeding in the dust. I brought you here." Clara blinked slowly. Her fingers clenched the furs. Why? A pause. He answered, because no one should die alone in the dirt. Then he turned and walked back out into the cold. That night, sleep came in fits. She heard voices in a language she didn't understand, the gentle murmur of fire, children laughing beyond the lodge, and now and then the drumming. It wasn't music. It was something older, deeper, something that spoke to the part of her soul that had refused to die. In the morning, she tried to sit up again. The woman Maka helped her, gave her water, something bitter to drink. Clara winced but swallowed. He is called Tasavato, Maka said. He does not speak much. His heart was broken long ago. Clara tried to ask more, but pain lanced through her side, forcing her to lie back. The world spun. Her fingers clutched the edge of the furs like a drowning woman. I need to go, she whispered. He'll come back. Bo. He'll look for me. You are safe here, Maka said. For now. For now. The words echoed louder than they should have. Later, when the sun had climbed high, Clara asked for her dress. Maka returned it wordlessly. Clara stared at it in silence. The white fabric was stiff with dried blood, the lace torn. The blue ribbon Bo had tied around her waist, now dark with dirt. She pulled it into her lap. This was the last thing she had of her old life, and it stank of betrayal. Outside, she heard the children laugh as they played. A horse snorted. The wind danced through the grasses. Then footsteps. She looked up as Tasavato approached. He didn't sit, just stood, looking down at her. One hand rested on the hilt of a hatchet at his side. You heal fast, he said. That is good. Clara stared at him for a moment. Why did you really help me? He hesitated. Then, because I buried someone once, and I swore I wouldn't again. She opened her mouth to speak, but the sound of a distant horse made them both freeze. He turned, eyes narrowing. Clara's heart seized. You hear that? He nodded. She tried to rise. Her legs buckled. Tasavato caught her, held her upright for a breath, then released her gently. Stay inside. Do not show your face. But if it's Bo. He didn't answer, just stepped outside. Clara crawled to the entrance of the lodge and watched through the gap. The rider passed on the far ridge. A silhouette. Not Bo, too thin. A scout, maybe. Searching. But for what? She clutched the blue ribbon tighter in her fist. Tasavato came back in after a while. Said nothing. Just sat by the fire and sharpened his blade. Clara looked at him. The ribbon still clutched in her palm. She had no boots. No name. No home. But she had lived. And if Bo was coming back, he would not find the same woman he left for dead. Not anymore. The second morning came with a wind that smelled of sage and smoke. Clara stirred slowly, her body still sore, but no longer on fire. The pain had settled into something dull and bearable. Her breath came easier. The fever had broken. She sat up with effort, wrapped in soft furs stitched with beaded patterns, strange symbols that meant nothing to her, but felt important all the same. The lodge was quiet except for the crackling of the fire. Beyond the canvas flap, she heard murmurs, the murmur of children, a splash of water, the distant thump of hooves. Then a shadow passed across the lodge's entrance. He ducked in without a sound. Same stoic face. Same braids wrapped in leather cord. His chest bare except for a necklace of bare claws and bone. His eyes met hers only briefly before he knelt beside the fire and stirred the coals with the butt of a stick. You shouldn't be sitting up yet, he said without looking. I'm tired of lying down, Clara said, her voice scratchy. He nodded once and dropped a handful of dried roots into the boiling pot over the fire. You have a name? She asked. He glanced over. Many. That's not an answer. It is the only one I give. Something in the way he said it made her stop pressing. He didn't speak to be mysterious. He simply didn't need more words than necessary. He moved like the wind through a canyon, swift, quiet, unmoved by attention. She watched his hands. Scarred but not clumsy. There was a gentleness beneath the calluses. You pulled a bullet from my side, she said. I've done worse. Do I owe you something? His gaze met hers for a long moment. Only you're living. That silenced her. She looked down at her hands, fingers twitching with nerves. One of her fingernails was cracked to the quick. She hadn't even noticed. "What do they call you?" she asked again, gentler this time. He hesitated. "Then, Tasavato." She nodded. Clara Whitmore." He stood and left without another word. That afternoon, she hobbled out into the light with Maka's help. The camp spread across a grassy clearing beside a slow-moving river. Children played near the water, chasing each other with sticks. A group of elders sat in a circle, weaving something she couldn't identify. A few young men were sparring with bows. No one stared at her. No one flinched. And yet, she had never felt more foreign in her life. Maka led her to a log near the fire circle and pressed a cup into her hands. Something warm, smoky. It tasted of bitter bark and honey. Clara forced it down with a grimace. "You will walk like a baby deer for days," Maka said, smirking. Clara gave a weak laugh. "That's generous. I feel like a snake that's been stepped on." Maka laughed louder. "Good. Pain means you are alive. Men forget that. Women know it." Later, Clara sat by the fire alone, picking at the hem of her ruined dress. She'd scrubbed it in the river as best she could. It still bore the stain, that dark maroon halo that refused to wash away. A rustle of branches. Tasavato returned, this time with 2 rabbits slung over his shoulder. He didn't speak as he skinned them, working with a bone-handled blade. His movements were so methodical it was like watching a ritual. She watched him. "You live alone?" He nodded. "By choice." "Why?" He paused, not looking at her. "Because peace lives where people are not." "You didn't strike me as peaceful." A faint twitch at the corner of his mouth, maybe the ghost of a smile. "Neither did you." She couldn't argue. When she turned away, she found herself staring at the children again. One of them had a twisted foot, limping after the others with stubborn pride. Another stopped mid-play and brought Clara a pebble polished, smooth by the river. "For luck," he said solemnly, then ran off. She clutched it tight for a long time. That night, thunder rolled far off on the horizon, a storm building over the dry hills. The air turned sharp and electric. Clara sat by the fire inside the lodge, staring into the flames. Tasavato was beside her, sharpening a long blade in silence. "Did you lose someone?" she asked finally. He didn't look up, just continued running the stone down the blade's edge. "Yes. Wife." He nodded. "What happened?" He stopped, looked into the fire as if he saw her there. "She was taken. White men. Settlers. They wanted land. They burned our winter lodge." She did not run fast enough. Clara's throat closed. She turned her gaze to the fire too, eyes stinging. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "She was not weak," he said. "She fought. Like you." "I didn't fight," Clara said bitterly. "I crawled. I bled. That's not the same." Tasavato shook his head. "You lived. That's stronger than you know." The wind picked up outside, and with it came the smell of distant rain. He stood and moved to the flap of the lodge, peering out into the dark. "Storm is close." Clara tried to stand but stumbled. He caught her under the arm without a word, steadying her. Her fingers brushed against his bare arm, warm, solid. He didn't flinch. Neither did she. "I hate storms," she said, trying to laugh. "Good," he said, deadpan. "Storms like being hated. It makes them louder." She blinked, then snorted, half in amusement, half in shock. "Did you just make a joke?" "I make many," he said, releasing her arm gently. "Most of them are better." Lightning forked across the sky. For a moment, they were both lit up like figures in a painting. Her pale, tired, but standing. Him shadowed, unmoving, a mountain in human shape. Then came the sound. A distant rifle shot. Not thunder. Tasavato froze. Clara went cold. "That wasn't lightning." "No," he said. Another shot cracked. Then another. He reached for his bow and moved to the doorway. "Stay inside." But she didn't. She hobbled after him, heart pounding, lungs tight. From the tree line beyond the camp, a figure galloped through the brush, shouting. One of the young hunters, bleeding from the shoulder. "Riders," he yelled in Cheyenne. 4, maybe 5. Tasavato turned back to Clara. "You said he'd come." Clara swallowed hard. Her fingers gripped the post for support. "It's him," she said. "It's Bo." "You're sure?" "He never finishes a kill," she whispered. "He likes to hear women scream." Tasavato's face darkened. His grip on the bow tightened. He barked orders to the others. Warriors sprang into motion. Women gathered children. The old gathered stones and tools. Everything was sudden, sharp, purposeful. Clara stood frozen, useless. Then Maka came and pressed something into her hands. It was a knife. "Do not die quiet," Maka said. And she walked away. Tasavato appeared again. "You will stay in the back lodge. Maka is there. If they breach the line, run. North, toward the hills." "I'm not running," Clara said. He stared at her. "I've been running for years. I won't again." A long silence. Then he nodded once. "You ride poorly. Then you'll learn fast." Thunder rolled again. This time, no one mistook it for weather. The air smelled like firewood and danger. Clara gripped the worn handle of the knife Maka had given her, standing just outside the lodge as the first torch appeared on the far ridge. 4 riders. Then 5. Each one a shadow carved against the glowing horizon. Their laughter echoed before the horses reached the tree-line. They weren't hiding. They wanted to be seen. At the center of them rode Bo Carter. His coat flapped open, pistol across his lap like a sleeping snake. He leaned forward in the saddle with that same easy grin that used to turn her stomach with guilt, back when she still thought she'd failed him somehow. Now she knew better. "You see him?" Clara whispered. Tasavato stood beside her, bow drawn. He nodded once. "I see death riding a horse." She felt the words sink through her like stones in a river. Children were already hidden in the back shelters. The elders had retreated with them. A dozen warriors, bows strung, rifles loaded, stood in scattered positions between the lodge and the tree line. And Clara, bruised, limping, arms still sore from healing, refused to be anywhere else. The riders halted just short of the river bend. The torches illuminated Bo's face. Still handsome, in that deceptive way snakes are. Smooth skin, charming smile, dead eyes. "Evenin'," he called, voice like syrup laced with venom. "I came for what's mine." No one answered. He waited, shrugged. "Look, I don't want trouble. I just want her. Pale, mouthy, southern. Shoots like a drunk squirrel and runs like she's wearing her daddy's boots." Still silence. Then Bo raised his voice. "You got 10 seconds. Then I start firing." Tasavato stepped forward, bow still drawn, blade at his hip. "She is not yours. She never was." Bo blinked. His grin widened. "Now that is funny," he said. "You gonna tell me about the sanctity of marriage? That little lady's wearing my ring. She gave vows in a church, signed her name, which means, friend, she's mine." Clara stepped forward before Tasavato could stop her. "No," she said loud and clear. "I'm not." Bo's expression didn't change, but his voice sharpened. "Clara, that you?" "It's me," she replied. "The one you left bleeding for buzzards." Bo's smile faltered, only for a heartbeat. "Well, damn," he said. "You really are the stubborn sort. You should have made sure I was dead." "Thought I did. You always were lazy." He chuckled. "I liked you better quiet. I liked you better buried." The silence that followed snapped like a brittle bone. Then Bo raised his arm. "All right. Guess we're doing this the hard way." Gunfire cracked. The first shot grazed the dirt near Clara's feet. Another ripped into the post beside Tasavato. He loosed his arrow without a word. One of the riders screamed, fell from the saddle. The camp erupted in movement. Shadows danced in firelight. Warriors shouted in Cheyenne. Bullets sparked against rocks. Horses screamed. Clara dropped behind a barrel and loaded the old revolver Maka had slipped into her hand with the knife. Her fingers shook. Her breathing turned ragged. She peeked over the top. One rider charged directly toward the central fire, torch raised. She aimed, fired. The kickback sent her elbow flaring with pain, but the bullet struck true. The rider pitched sideways off the saddle. The torch landed near the fire pit and rolled. Another rider dismounted and ran toward the lodge. Clara shouted, "Right side." Tasavado turned, met the attacker with a swing of his tomahawk, the blade buried in the man's side. Clara didn't look away. And then another figure darted past the fighting. Bo. He wasn't there to win a fight. He was there for her. He charged through the chaos, on foot now, pistol drawn, hack on, hair matted with sweat. Clara fired at him. Missed. He was too fast. Slipped between lodges. Dodged the main fight. And then he was on her, grabbing her wrist, twisting it until the revolver fell from her hand. He slammed her against a support beam. The wind left her lungs in a gasp. "Gotcha," he hissed in her ear. "Always knew you'd run to Redskins for help. You've got that weak little savior complex. Always needing someone to pull you from the river." She spat in his face. He wiped off, calm as ever. "Shame. You were real pretty once." She kneed him in the gut. He grunted, stumbled. Clara lunged for the revolver, but Bo grabbed her hair, yanked her back down. Pain exploded in her scalp. She screamed. Then a shadow fell across them. Tasavado. He tackled Bo with such force it sent both men into the dirt. The tomahawk flew. Bo rolled, drew his pistol, fired. The shot rang out. Tasavado staggered. Clara screamed again, rage this time, and dove toward the revolver. Bo turned, gun raised. She fired first. He collapsed backward, eyes wide with surprise. One hand grasped at his chest. He tried to speak. Nothing came out. She crawled to Tasavado. The bullet had hit him in the shoulder, clean through. Blood soaked his chest, but his eyes were open, jaw clenched against the pain. "You're going to be all right," she whispered, voice shaking. He didn't reply, just stared at her, like she was the only thing holding him to the earth. The battle behind them was nearly over. 2 more riders fled into the darkness. The warriors didn't chase. The fire still crackled. The camp quieted. Clara sat beside Tasavado, her hands pressed to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "He's dead," she said softly. Tasavado blinked slowly. "He is gone," he whispered. "You are not." She shook her head. "You took a bullet for me. You would have done the same." She looked down at her hands, covered in his blood, her own blood long dried. The dress she wore had once been a symbol of love. Now it was a grave shroud. She stood, walked across the dirt to where Bo's body lay. He was still warm. The revolver lay beside his hand, fingers twitching in death. His eyes were open, still smug, still confident he'd win. She stared down at him. Then slowly, deliberately, she removed the ribbon from her waist, the faded blue one he'd tied there when they first arrived. She tossed it down on his chest. "You don't get to own anything else." Behind her, Maka and 2 other women approached Tasavado with supplies, herbs, cloth, steady hands. Clara turned back, limping over to them. She dropped to her knees beside him. "Stay with me," she whispered. He nodded once, lips tight in pain. Maka began her work. Clara stayed until the sun began to rise. The flames died down. The stars blinked out. When the light finally crested the horizon, the camp stood quiet again. Tasavado slept, breathing steady. Clara rose. She walked to the river, bent down, washed her hands, her face, her arms. Then she pulled the wedding dress over her head, tossed it into the water, and watched it float downriver, soaked, tattered, ruined. It caught on a rock briefly, then slipped loose and drifted away. She stood there in the sunrise, clothed only in a linen wrap and resolve. The woman who had crawled through blood to survive was gone. Only the widow remained, and she had fire in her now. The lodge was quiet when Clara stepped inside. Tasavado lay on his side, breathing shallow but steady. His shoulder was wrapped tight in salve-soaked cloth, and Maka sat nearby, grinding herbs in a stone bowl. A beam of morning sun sliced through the hide flap, casting a soft golden glow across his face. He looked peaceful, but it wasn't the kind of peace born of surrender. It was the stillness that follows survival. Clara knelt beside him, her fingers brushing the back of his hand. He stirred, eyelids heavy. When his gaze found hers, he managed a half-smile. "You're awake," she whispered. "You are barefoot," he said, voice gravel-low. She looked down. Her feet were caked in dirt. She hadn't noticed. "I threw the dress in the river." He didn't ask which dress. "I buried Bo," she added softly. No name. No stone. Just a hole and the sound of coyotes. Tasavato closed his eyes for a long moment, then opened them again. "Good." She gave a small laugh. "That's it? Just good?" He shifted slightly, grimacing with the movement. "The dead do not need words." "And the living?" He turned his head toward her. "They need time." That night, the camp gathered. A fire roared high in the center circle. The wind carried the smell of roasted meat and damp earth. Sparks floated upward like fireflies. Clara stood among them, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. She wore a tunic stitched for her, one that fit her form without apology. Her hair, once tangled and matted with blood, was now woven back by Maka's careful hands. The knife still hung at her side, and though she prayed she'd never have to use it again, she'd learned not to fear the weight of it. Children danced around the flames, laughing. Men passed jugs of sweet root drink. The older women clapped in rhythm with the drums. But it was the quiet glances, the nods, the subtle acknowledgments that told her the truth. They no longer saw her as a widow left for dead. They saw her as a woman who had risen. A few days later, Tasavato stood on his own, slowly, carefully, but proudly. Clara watched him walk with determination toward the horse pen, his arms still bound tight to his chest. "You're not ready," she said, trying not to smile. "I'm not dead," he replied. He selected a buckskin mare and nodded at her. "Get on." Clara blinked. "What?" "You said you can't ride." "I said I ride poorly." "Then it is time to learn." She squinted at him. "You're asking me to get on a wild horse, barefoot, with no saddle." "No," he said, calm as water. "I'm asking you to stop being afraid." That stung in all the right ways. She walked to the mare and placed a hesitant hand on the animal's neck. The creature snorted, but didn't shy away. Tasavato gave her a boost. She scrambled up awkwardly, muttering curses under her breath. He smirked. "Better than a squirrel with a rifle." "Don't make me throw a rock at you." He stepped back and gave a sharp whistle. The mare trotted in a slow circle. Clara clung tight at first, then relaxed. The rhythm settled into her bones. The wind in her face. The ground beneath her. It was nothing like the chaos that had brought her here. She rode. And this time, no one was chasing her. That evening, she sat with Maka beneath the stars. "You will not stay long," Maka said. Clara didn't deny it. "There are others like me," she said. "Women who've been traded, beaten, forgotten. Some buried and left behind. Some who survived. They need to know they can ride, too." Maka handed her a bundle, wrapped in deerskin, tied with braided cord. Clara opened it. Inside was the shawl Maka wore during fire ceremonies. Hand-woven, dyed deep red with blue whorls like river eddies. "For when you ride," Maka said, "so they see your fire before your face." Tears stung Clara's eyes. She folded the shawl against her chest. "Thank you." Tasavato joined them then, limping but upright. Clara looked up at him. "You knew I'd leave." He nodded once. She rose to her feet, facing him. "I want you to come." He didn't flinch. "And if I stay, then I'll come back." They stood that way a long time, until he reached out, fingers brushing her jaw. "You are not ashes," he said. "You are the fire." At dawn, Clara rode out. Not as a bride, not as a victim, not even as a widow, but as a rider. The shawl whipped behind her like a flag. The horse beneath her obeyed, without question. She carried a small knife, a waterskin, and a revolver she'd learned to shoot with steady hands. Word traveled fast in towns across the frontier. Some said she was a ghost. Others swore she was a bounty hunter. A few whispered she was the spirit of a bride murdered in the canyon who'd risen to punish men like the one who buried her. Wherever she rode, women followed. Not with banners or war cries, but with quiet strength, with stories, with wounds that turned to scars, and scars that turned to fire. She became legend. In one town, a saloon keeper turned pale when she walked through the doors in her crimson shawl. He offered free drink, then free gold, then begged her to leave without bloodshed. She smiled. "I'm not here for you." In another, she stood between a man and his battered wife and asked only one question. "Do you want him gone?" The woman nodded. He didn't wake up the next morning. The name Widow Who Rode began appearing in trail songs and carved on stones by creek beds. Children played games pretending to be her. Some even wrapped old blankets around their shoulders and rode sticks like stallions. And back at the camp by the river, Tasavato sat by the fire, carving wooden animals for the children, always listening for hoofbeats. He never said it aloud, but every time the wind changed, he turned his face to the horizon. Clara's path wasn't one that ended in peace, but it burned bright enough to light the way for others. The world hadn't broken her. It had revealed her, and she had chosen to rise. They say she still rides, on cold mornings before the sun is up, when the land is quiet enough to hear hoofbeats echo over the ridges. Some claim she's long dead. Others say death wouldn't dare take her without asking first. But all agree on one thing. The widow who rode never left anyone behind. She always came back. And if you're lucky, she'll come for you, too. Because not every ghost haunts. Some protect. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. After all, some legends begin with a blood-stained dress and end with a trail of fire.